Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Teresa.
And this is the Creating Normal podcast, a podcast on living a creative life beyond mental illness,
where we share our successes and our struggles in life and in art.
Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Creating Normal podcast. This is really exciting. Teresa.
Hi.
Teresa and I are going to be here every week, pretty much every week, talking about living a creative life beyond mental illness. And this is our first episode, and it's really, really exciting. Each episode we're going to kind of start off with a little review of things that we've read, things that have inspired us this week, how things are going with us creatively and in our lives, kind of mental illness-wise and that kind of thing. Then we're going to talk about a topic. And then we're going to kind of leave you with something to think on, something to reflect on over the next week. And that's basically how the episode's going to go. So, Teresa, tell us about this week.
Okay. Well, thank you, James. So this week was a good week for me. I got 2 posts written, and I actually was really proud of myself because I even had them scheduled to go up. So usually what I've been doing is writing and then I get the post up on my website and then I backdate it. And it's the same thing when I write on Medium. Usually Medium, I'm getting that put up the day before it goes up and submitting it to a publication and just praying it gets accepted in time. So I was really excited that this time I was ahead of everything and on top of it. And I even got 2,000 words written on my memoir. So that for me was really exciting. And then from a social media perspective, so hello listeners, my focus for this month is Twitter. I don't understand some of this social media stuff from a brand building perspective and from a messaging perspective, and it seems like all the advice out there is simply be authentic and engage with people and it will happen. And I feel like I need more control than that. So I actually went on Udemy and I bought a course for $12 and on Twitter, and I'm going to start implementing some of those techniques as I go through, and I just want to see what I can do for my Twitter presence. And I'm measuring this mostly in terms of follower count, which I'm not thrilled about, but I don't know a better way to measure it. But also I'm just going to kind of trust my gut in terms of like notifications, in terms of mentions and retweets and things like that, and just kind of what my sense is in terms of engagement. I don't know. What do you do with Twitter, James?
What do I do? I don't have a strategy for Twitter. Actually, I mean, this is a podcast where we talk about mental illness, where we talk about creativity, and I actually host another podcast called the Perma Podcast, and I was talking to a guy called Science Mike who has a podcast. He's called Mike McHarger, actually is his name, but everyone calls him Science Mike. And we were talking about social media and mental illness recently, and the impact social media can have on mental illness. And I've definitely withdrawn a little bit from social media in recent weeks and months. I'm still on there quite often. I still share my work there. I still interact with people there just as I did before, but I've made a conscious decision not to go there as much, not to spend as much time there as I did before, and not to get involved in heated political debates or any kind of big debates. And you know what? My mental health has actually got a lot better as a result. So I'm not trying to grow a Twitter following. I don't even know what my Twitter following is. I think it's somewhere in the region of 3,500 people or something.
Jeez.
And I don't know whether it's going up or down. I literally don't keep a record of it. Yeah, so that's kind of my. I mean, I love posting on Instagram. I love posting on Facebook. I love going on social media and interacting with people and sharing stuff. But I want to keep it in its proper place, because I know the damage it can do to my mental health, definitely, and my emotional state as well. And I think I think that's one topic we should definitely explore in a future episode is the links between social media and mental illness, because
I
I
think
think
that's a great idea. I'll make a note of it. So, what's your week been like, James?
my week has been, well, it was the week we're recording, it was my birthday.
Happy
So
birthday, by the way.
so I had a party and I had a meal with my family, and I've been chilling out a little bit, resting, been off work a little bit, which has been nice. And um, I saw this movie called The Heretic, which I loved, about Rob Bell, who's probably my biggest spiritual and creative inspiration. And it's a kind of tribute to him, but it's a documentary about him, but made with his cooperation and kind of behind the scenes of his work and his tours and things. And it explores more of what he believes and what he cares about, and it's amazing. And it really moved me and inspired me, and um, got me thinking about my own creative work, because I've been struggling with with writing. I've been struggling with creating things for a while, and that's to do with my personal trauma and the things I know I need to write about next are scary, and so it's not really traditional writer's block, but it's kind of fear, of not doing what I've got to say justice. Um, and I'm working it through. I'm working it through with coaches and spiritual director and things, but it's a process. So part of a bigger process of my story, which has been going on for quite a while. So yeah, that's kind of my week. You know.
That's
Um,
actually a fantastic segue into our topic for today, which is procrastination. And I asked James if we could talk about procrastination because it was a major factor in my life last week. I had actually put up a post on a Facebook group that James and I both belong to, a writers group, saying, I am really struggling with this right now. And I know what it was. I had a topic I was going to write about Martin Luther. So the topic was more about how mental illness doesn't necessarily have to hold us back from achieving what we want to achieve or from doing amazing things. I think for a lot of people, mental illness feels like a death sentence, and to me, that's not what it is at all. I think that it can be a struggle, and I think it can be a challenge, but I don't think that I don't think that it has to stop us from achieving the things that we want to achieve in our lives. And
mm,
of course, there's a lot that has to go with that, right? Like there's medication and there's self-care and there's blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so to me, one of the most amazing examples of this is Martin Luther. And I had read a biography on Martin Luther. And this is a man who struggled with depression all throughout his life and quite possibly, in my opinion, probably also had bipolar disorder. So I look at him and he changed the course of so much in life. But my problem was I didn't know how to start writing this post. And because I couldn't write that post, I also psychologically couldn't allow myself to write my post for Medium. And then Monday came and went, last Monday came and went, and I hadn't posted it. I didn't have it drafted, let alone posted up on my website. So I was behind on my posting schedule. And then I had other things I wanted to write, and I had video to edit, and I had other things. And I was stuck on my couch knitting because I couldn't because I was where I was, and I was just doing everything possible to not write this post. So, James, that's why I asked if we could talk about procrastination today.
right. Yeah, procrastination. Phew, that's a big topic. I mean, I think I think a lot of people struggle with procrastination, not just writers, not just creative people, but anyone who's doing any kind of work. And to me, from in my experience, what I've learned, what I've seen, procrastination is rooted basically in fear. It's about it's you don't want to do the thing that you're avoiding. You want to somehow avoid it. You don't want to face it, and there's a lot of things. There's a lot of issues around that, and it could be a lack of self-worth. Like I'm not good enough to do this work. I'm not going to be able to do this work justice. Other people have said this better than me, which is something I've heard from writers quite a lot. Um, when I've worked with writers, because I do a bit of writing coaching, um, and or it can be self-sabotage as well, um, or it can be fear of success. That if I do this and it's good, then it could, who knows where it could take me, that kind of thing. And I might actually have to face the fact that I'm a success. So it's fear of confronting something that's true in us, I think. Um, Something that it's fear of confronting the truth about ourselves in a way. Procrastination. It's putting something off because we don't want to face it. And on a very subconscious level, I think it's a very subconscious thing. I don't think we sit down and decide not to do something because we're afraid. I think something in our subconscious kind of wants to drag us away from it because it's afraid. That's been my experience anyway. When I try and avoid something, when I'm procrastinating on something, it's because I'm afraid somewhere deep down um, of either success or failure or not being good enough or um, something like that. Or I'm just not interested in the work. Like it may be something that I don't really want to do, but somehow there's some truth being hidden there, and we have to kind of confront that. That's my experience anyway.
Well,
Um,
and I think that's kind of where I was last week too, right? Like I it was an important post for me to write, and it was an important post for me not to goof up. The original plan had been that I was going to have a ghostwriter or a guest poster share somebody who was more secular or non-Christian. And so I was frustrated because that person kind of disappeared on me, and I have no idea where their writing is on this. Um, and I had already pushed back the topic 4 weeks to accommodate their schedule. So I think there was a lot of frustration in there for me. And then, you know, um, I write sometimes on Christian topics, particularly related to mental health. And
mm,
Martin Luther is a Christian person, and I worry sometimes about being too Christian, and uh,
mm,
I do. I worry about that. Like, I don't want to turn away people. I don't want to turn off audience because all they ever hear from me is, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus is important to me. My faith is been a huge help to me and an aid to me, but I worry about that. And so I think that was some of the stumbling blocks that I had, was that it was really supposed to be a two-part kind of thing. And now it all fell on my shoulders. And now I had to find a way to present this in a way that I was hoping would be approachable to two kind of different audiences. So I think that was probably a bit of my struggle.
yeah, yeah, and that's a normal thing to happen. It's a common. Well, no, normal is the wrong word. It's a common thing to happen especially for writers. Like, um, I've run a group called Anxious Writers. I may be changing the name of that soon, but for writers who have fear and anxiety around their writing, and this is one thing they talk about all the time. Um, and you've got this big piece you want to write, and it's like, well, I don't know where I'm going to start. I don't know, and I don't think I'm procrastinating with my book. I don't think that's what I'm doing. I think I'm, because it's deeper than that. But um, the reason I'm not writing my book yet is fear, and so and it's kind of got very similar. It sounds very similar to what you're talking about with this blog post, and so which suggests to me that procrastination is about fear. Um,
Well, and then, then the challenge becomes, how do you break through it, right?
hmm,
So, for me, it was, I knew I was procrastinating. I've done enough mindfulness to know when I'm avoiding something now. And that's one reason why I haven't worked on the memoir too much. And why writing 2,000 words this week was a huge deal for me, is because
hmm,
I have procrastinated on that, because there's topics that, are uncomfortable. I want to address them, but just because I want to address them doesn't mean that I'm ready, that I want to address them right now. Um, but I think so for me, what it finally took was sitting down and not writing the intro. It took me, I had to sit down and I just had to start to outline a little bit. And then I started diving in on everything else. And then as I wrote the everything else, the intro and how to approach the topic kind of bubbled up for me. And then it was just a matter of going through and editing what I had already written to make it all flow better. Um, but you know what? For me, it really was just sitting down and facing the music and just making it happen.
Yeah, and that's it. That's how you deal with things. The only way out is through. You can't like walk around fear. You have to walk through it. It's like life. If you've got a big trauma, we've all got issues. I talk about this so often with people, especially recently, that we've all got stuff from our past, every single one of us, that shapes who we are now, and stuff that's unresolved, wounds or lack of forgiveness or betrayal or trauma or something, which shaped us, which maybe we haven't confronted fully. We think we have. But it's only the symptoms that we've confronted, like the coping mechanisms. And actually, what you need to do, and this is slightly off topic, but what you need to do is to confront the deeper problems first. Like, what is actually the problem? Actually go through it, face it, rather than ignore it. And then you can deal with the symptoms like that, because it's much easier to deal with the symptoms when you've dealt with the cause of the symptoms in the first place.
Mm.
If you treated the disease, then the symptoms are a lot easier to manage, because what happens is you train your brain to live certain ways, and it's easy to untrain your brain to do it when you've dealt with the reason why you got into those
Yeah.
habits in the first place. And in this instance, it's kind of in this kind of context, it's like you say, facing it, right? Something I say to writers when they're in this situation is just to literally write out, what's the worst thing that could happen if you write this post? What is the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing somebody could say? What's the like, what are you really afraid of? Just write it out. It doesn't have to be, you have to show it to anybody. Just write it out and name it, because when you name it, it kind of takes away its power a little bit.
I think that's a great tip. Just because we create the art, just because we write the piece, just because we paint the painting, just because we draw or the sketch or the whatever whatever form our creativity takes, doesn't mean that we have to share it with people. That can still remain just for us and not.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's power in naming things and identifying what's going on. It's one reason why I keep um, a strong journaling habit, is because I know that if I'm struggling, if I can get that out of my journal, then it may be emotional. I may have to handle those emotions and address those emotions. On the other hand, addressing those emotions means I'm moving forward and I'm getting unstuck, and that's a great feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why journaling is so good. It's why I need to definitely do more of it, because it is really 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 healing, and you get so much breakthrough because of it. And yeah, definitely. Um, sure. Good discussion.
Yeah, I think this has been a great discussion. We're going to include also in the show notes a link to a TED Talk that somebody referred to me on procrastination. I think it's called "I'm an Expert Procrastinator." It is hilarious, and he talks about some of the reasons why people procrastinate. And it's so well done. I'm not even going to try to explain it or dive into it because I'll ruin it.
Awesome.
But it's really worth. I think it's like a 15-minute video. It's really worth watching, and I think that you'll find it really amusing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be in the show notes, everyone. So
So
definitely,
I guess that's my
definitely.
recommend for the week, James, is this video that I'm going to put in the tips
That's unfair, isn't it? No, I've
in
got to
the show
recommend something.
notes.
I kind of already did a little bit, that movie I talked about, the Heretic. Um,
Is that on
um,
Netflix? Can we put a link to that in the show notes?
No, it's on iTunes and it's on Amazon as well. You can get it there. Yeah, we'll put a link in the.
We'll put a link in the show notes then.
Actually, I interviewed the director for my podcast as well. I don't know when this is going out, but that podcast will go out the week we're recording this. But I interviewed the director for my podcast, and he's an amazing guy. And there's an amazing story behind that movie as well. So I really would recommend to see it. And I would recommend listening to that podcast of mine as well. I'll put a link to my podcast in the show notes. Shameless plug. But I really think that people might benefit from that as well. So,
well, if you're going to shameless plug, I'm going to shameless plug. I have a new video podcast that's going up. You'll be able to find it on iTunes and YouTube, and I think Stitcher. Still got to figure that part out. Called My Undiagnosed Life. And it is a series of interviews with people with mental illness sharing their experiences. And James is actually the first person on that podcast. So if you want to know more of his story, just check it out.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, and also I'd like to say to everyone that, if you want to contact us, you can email us at creating normal podcast at gmail.com. Creating normal podcast at gmail.com. And we're also on Twitter at creating normal. So go and follow us there. Connect with us there and say hi. We'd love to connect with you and say hello to you and stuff. And we'll be on Facebook and stuff soon as well. So connect with us. We'd love to connect with you. So. And if you've got any topics you want us to talk about, anything you think we should cover, let us know. Any thoughts on what we talked about, let us know. We really want to kind of interact with you guys and get to know you all. So, that's great. So, cool.
Awesome. All right. So I guess maybe until next week, stay creating and stay healthy.
Yes. Stay creating, stay healthy. Yes. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Creating Normal podcast. You can find links and show notes to everything we've discussed today on our website at creatingnormalpodcast.com. We invite you to continue the conversation in our Facebook group, which you can find at Creating Normal Community. You can follow James on Twitter and Instagram at JamesPrescott77, and you can follow Teresa on Twitter and Instagram at Teresa M. Cologne. Thanks for listening.